Okay, thank you, Chair. We're now live.
Thanks, Suzanne. Morning, everybody. Thank everybody for coming to our meeting in public, which will be our final meeting in public today. And thanks, Sam, for helping us with signing this meeting as well, which is great. We've got apologies from John McDonald, Emma Pitty, Robin Dewis. Are there any more, Dawn, that we need to be aware of?
Yes, Chair, just Dean Wallace.
And Dean, okie dokie, and can confirm that we're quorate. Item 47, we've had no questions from members of the public. Can you just we're muted, please. Thank you. And then item 48, can I just have any declarations of interest pertaining to the agenda over and above the ones that are already listed? Okay, thanks very much. So straight in to the body of the meeting, item 49, my report. I'll take that as ever as read. Obviously, the mainstays of that are the close down and the ending of the CCG and some reflections around that, and hopefully some positivity going forwards. Happy to take any questions on that from anybody if there are any. Andrew, please.
Just an observation, Chair. I thought your language was superb and you captured the essence very well indeed, acknowledging the professionalism, the commitment, all of which are going to remain and continue, albeit with different titles and different configurations. But that is a massively strong endorsement of the strength of the team that we're handing over.
Thank you, Andrew. That's much appreciated. And I totally agree with regard to the team, the professionalism, and the continuation and the build on what we've already developed. Obviously, the pandemic was a titanic issue during the final parts of the governing body and for the whole system. But thank you. That's much appreciated. Any other questions for me? Great. We will move then on to item 50, Chief Exec's report, and that's Chris, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Nice jacket, Chris, by the way, I have to say.
Oh, you're very kind. So summer's here apparently, and so thank you. Chair, I'm going to save, with your permission, some of my reflections on the last 3 years until the end of the meeting, if that's okay. And so I'll just do this report in its factual basis, if that helps, colleagues. And yes, very pertinent moment. The last Chief Exec's report for this governing body, but as Andrew has said, there will be ongoing Chief Exec's reports to the successor body. But in the main, as always, keeping the style and format the same until the end. We've got section 1 where I highlight some reflections of the position of the health and care system as we see it, some of the challenges we've been through together as part of that system, and some of the specific things that we have managed on the system's behalf. Some reflections again about the inherited position the Integrated Care Board will receive, but importantly the assurances that have gone into that handover position. And I'm really pleased to set out a couple of things that are matters of fact in terms of the high assurance level that we've received through NHS England in terms of our handover and the review and the readiness assessment, which not only is about the readiness of the Integrated Care Board to take over, but also of the CCG in its handover and its position, and also the work that we've been doing through audit committee, the reviews that we've had through internal audit, external audit have given some independent assurances to obviously the position that we're handing over, but the position that we've built over the years. So that is in section 1, and I'm sure colleagues may at some point wish to say some things about that. In terms of the report, I just want to pull out, if I can, because it's in the report, and I just want to pull out. So whilst technically it is correct that the CCGs have been in statutory, formation since 2013, therefore 9 years, I think it's fair to say that the CCG movement started 2-3 years before that. And so, in essence, they were in shadow form from 2012, and the Derbyshire CCGs would have been very similar, but they were in preparatory form certainly a year before that. So it's actually been a longer journey than probably the report highlights, although technically, of course, the report is correct. In terms of the couple of points I just want to pick out, in terms of operational resilience, I will say things later in the agenda on this, but clearly it remains challenged, particularly the urgent care system. We know about the importance of hospital flow and the work that's going on around that, the importance of the work in our community settings, particularly our general practices, and that's going to continue as we start to come through summer and begin our winter preparedness through the Integrated Care Board and its associated partners and structures. Section 2, as always, sets out the things I've been doing on your behalf, and there is regularity of that. And as always, I'm sure you can see the importance of partnership work in my diary. Section 3 just picks out a couple of things I just wanted to highlight. So actually 2 parts, Section 3 and Section 4, talks about the ongoing importance of COVID vaccination. Section 3 highlighting in vulnerable groups, and Section 4 about the sort of spring campaign, the autumn campaign that we will be continuing to support. Just wanted to pull out for colleagues and express my personal congratulations in Section 4 to Dr. Hal Spencer, who has been formally now appointed as Chief Executive of Chesterfield Royal Hospital, which is very, very welcome news. Colleagues will know Hal from his previous role as Medical Director at Chesterfield Royal, and of course, we wish him well in that journey, and I'm sure the Integrated Care Board will look forward to working with him in his new capacity. And I just want to finish, if I can, because in Section 4.5, it just talks about the thank you day that occurred on the 5th of June. And we certainly reflected that. We did a video messaging that we're still predominantly virtual working, as this governing body attests to. And we did some video work that was shared, put on our social media channels, etc., just to say thank you to colleagues that have done everything they can wherever they work in the system, whatever role they play. We all play a part, and it was important to stop and reflect and thank you to all colleagues. And so I shall finish with a thank you to the governing body, and I'll happily take any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions for Chris? I've got Buck, please.
Great, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chris. I just want to echo something that was in Chris's report about the dedicated and talented staff that I've certainly had the pleasure of working with since 2011, which is when CCGs went into shadow form. And just as a sort of brief point, as a clinician working in the NHS, you never really understand and appreciate the non-clinicians and the value and the amount of hard work that they put in to allow us who are front-line facing clinicians to do our job. And that became very apparent to me when I came on board with the CCG, and that's continued to kind of really impress me all these years, that we have such dedicated and excellent staff who are non-clinicians, who make the service what it is and allow clinicians like myself to do the jobs that we do. And I think they're very much sometimes underappreciated by the public, because the public only see the clinical front-facing side of the NHS, but the NHS would not run without those wonderful people who I've had the pleasure of working over the past few years. So I just wanted to kind of put that on public record, and certainly my thanks to all those individuals who I've had the pleasure of working with over a number of years.
Thanks, Buck. I think we'd all echo that very much. Andrew, please.
Thanks, Chair. The phrase I picked out of Chris's report was, we're handing over an assured position. That is so true, and much of that assurance is beneath the water. It's not sexy, but it keeps the show on the road. It keeps the crises away from the front door. And I've been part of that to the extent I've been a member of the Audit Committee and Chair of the Finance Committee. And we, at our last audit meeting, we've never seen such a good endorsement by our external reviewers. And from the finance perspective, I can speak very long and boringly about the excellence of our finance team. No less than the third best in the country, and only time defeated us on getting the Victor Ludorum on that one. So that is, and of course, the vast majority of those teams are being transferred to the new organisation. So our inheriting board member colleagues can be assured they've got very efficient transactional teams and operational teams who should, and beware the commentator's curse here, who should not lead them into crises unless there are some really challenging left field things that come and challenge us. So that is hard slog. Helen Dilliston's a big part of that. You know, corporate assurance and corporate governance is not the sexy thing, but it's so essential to maintain the efficiency and the probity of a public sector organisation.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. Anything further, Chris, that you want to add?
No, and as I said earlier, just some, with your permission, some reflections at the end of the meeting, just to finalise. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I think the same for myself as well. Just a quick order of business. Susanna's just let me know, just for the members, that the live feed is having some technical issues today. So we're not live, but we are recorded, and then we will obviously transmit this and upload it as soon as we can afterwards. So just to keep the members aware of that. Okay, if we move on then to item 51, decision item, close down of the CCG corporate committees and the annual reports. Helen, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. So for the benefit of Sam and one or two others on this call who may not know me, I'm Helen Dillistone, Executive Director of Corporate Strategy and Delivery. So yes, this item here this morning is for decision, and it sets out the annual reports from all of the CCG committees. It covers the Audit Committee, the Clinical and Lay Commissioning Committee, the Engagement Committee, Finance Committee and the Primary Care Commissioning Committee. As colleagues know, I've been leading much of the work to close down the CCG, and one of the important features of that work has been to capture the work of the committees, ensuring that any outstanding live matters are transferred to the new ICB where relevant, and that we set out which of the new emerging ICB committees will take ownership for some of these issues going forward. Colleagues will know that there is a requirement each year for the CCG to produce an annual report at the end of the financial year from each of the committees, and hopefully this report provides not just assurance to the governing body around the work of each of the committees, but also assurance going into the ICB that we've got a legacy document and the issues are being transferred appropriately. So each report has been through the June cycle of meetings where the chair and the executive lead with committee members have agreed these reports. So many of you will already be very involved in the production of this work. And to thank Suzanne, who has done much of the coordination of this work and her team to set it out in hopefully a really clear and concise way. I won't go through each of the reports, but they do look, as you'll see, very similar in style. I think an important feature of each of the reports is not just the context, the background, the membership, but also some of the internal and external controls and where we've had independent assurances or audits, etc. That's also captured. So again, a really important position for the ICB to note, but also in terms of safely closing down the CCG as well. Second thing to say, I think, to pull out is some of the ongoing issues that will need to transfer, and each report in its final page has a set of live risks, and some of these recognising were written at a point in time, so some of them may be from earlier dates in June. So the live risks are captured, ready to transfer where applicable and where relevant. There's a rationale setting out why those risks are being transferred, what the risk status is, where the responsible new ICB committee will take that on, recognising, of course, those ICB committees will continue to evolve post July, and who the new ICB executive owner will be. There will also be actions as well as risks that have been captured, so any outstanding actions that need to be taken forward or certainly taken account of post July have also been captured, and again hopefully fairly clear where those live actions will sit. So I don't plan to say any more than that, Chair, really, other than to formally present it here this morning to Governing Body, to thank the teams, the chairs and the exec leads for helping to produce these. It's a really important part of the legacy, I think, and the transfer documentation going across to the new ICB. But certainly happy to take any questions, but hoping for approval of the report this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thorough as ever. Thank you very much. We've got comments, questions from Jill and then Ian S, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Jill Dentis. I'm the lay member for governance on the CCG Governing Body. And thanks to Helen for presenting the report, which I think is really comprehensive and gives a splendid overview of the work that's been done, the breadth and the depth of it all. And again, thanking everybody in terms of the committee arrangements for coordinating all this. Just for completeness, I think it's important to say that there is a report from the governance committee, but that's actually in the confidential section, so that there is the reports go across the whole array of committees that the CCG has in place. I also think it's a really helpful tool, or it will be, for the ICB as they come into form. And although it's going to be a different organisation with a different function and a different form, I think this really will help them to give a feel for the kind of things that have been important, and the kind of areas that they might want to consider as they move into the new organisational form. So again, just a huge thank you to everybody who's taken part. I think it really does show the complexity of what's been going on and how things have been managed over the last 12 months. So thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Thank you very much. And then Ian, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to approve the document. I think it's accurate. It shows the wide range of activities which the committees have been involved with. It doesn't. The only thing I want to highlight is it doesn't quite capture all the members' activities in committee work. So, for example, the work which members did on the committees forming the GUCD, for example. So when I look at clinical and lay line, for example, on attendance on page 38, I say myself and Bridget are poor attenders to CLCC, but actually we were at the GUCD Quality Assurance Committee, so which was a clash. So, but there will be other committees which didn't clash, which which aren't represented here. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't show the complete work of members, which goes over and beyond this and help to form the basis of the new organisation going forward. But I think it's an accurate document. I think it's a good outline for moving forward, and I'm happy to approve.
Thanks, Ian. I understand exactly what you're saying. I think it's obvious that there's lots of other work being done by individuals that isn't always perhaps formally captured. And I think both Chris and Andrew have alluded to that already. So again, thank you to everybody for all the work they've done that's perhaps under the surface, if you know what I mean, or outside of the some aspects of the spotlight, but fully understood. Any other comments or questions for Helen? Okay, so on that basis, we're being asked to approve the sort of the annual reports, audit, CLCC, engagement, finance, PCCC. I'll take a silence to be a yes as an approval. Any concerns, please shout out, hand up, asterisks. Okay, thank you very much. So that's
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you, everybody. Just give us a sec while I scroll back up. Okay, so we're on to the corporate assurance section now, item 52, finance report, and I've got Richard next to that. Hi, Richard.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, report contained in the package month one is this is probably the last time you hear me say this, but it's another unusual position. So the plan's not yet finalised and a resubmission is due on the 20th of June. And also we have a complicating factor that we kind of got two forecast outturn dates because we need to produce a set of final accounts at the end of Q1. And obviously we will need a 12-month forecast. So the report details the expenditure incurred and the key risks as they are known at this stage. And the reported year-end forecast is a surplus of £10.9 million, and that constitutes an adverse variance to the initially submitted plan of £9 million, and there are three key elements to this. The first is a forecast overspend against mental health budgets of £3 million, which is with the Mental Health LD and Autism Delivery Board to manage. There is a shortfall against the £10 million prescribing efficiency target of £3.5 million, which our prescribing team are working hard to resolve, and there is a remaining unidentified efficiency target of £2.7 million at this point in the year. And the revised plan that's being prepared for submission next week is quite different, following extensive rework incorporating advice and guidance from NHS E&I, and it obviously will be discussed in further detail in the confidential session following this meeting. So governing body is requested to note that allocations have been conveyed for the full year at £2.117 billion. The CCG is required to comply with national budget upload deadlines and so has not been able to upload a phased budget at this stage, and therefore only the year-to-date expenditure has been reported, and that year-to-date expenditure figure is £172 million. The reported year-end forecast adverse variance to the initially submitted plan as described is £9 million, and I'm happy to take any questions at that point, Chair.
Sorry, just trying to unmute. Thanks, Richard. Are there any comments or questions for Richard, please? Okay, great. Thank you, Richard. So segueing straight in to 53, Andrew, please, the Finance Committee report.
Example of speech synthesis in English.
Sorry. Still jostling with the new phone. Right. Yes, Richard has emphasised that it's a moving horizon in the finance field, and there'll be another iteration on the 20th, and there'll be many more throughout the year, I suspect. So watch this space for the changes. So just a couple of points to emphasise in the theme of continuity and assurance. I've already mentioned the highly functioning financial team that is going to be continuing, and whether the news is assured as good, bad or ugly, you can place reliance on the fact that it will be an accurate analysis of the situation. And then, of course, that's a finance functions duty discharged, because it will be then for the policy priority decision makers to discuss how to address that. Secondly, I believe joint working over 12 months or more with the System Finance and Estates Committee has been one of the strengths and has underpinned a smooth transition. And we've got the chair, Richard Wright, of the ICB Finance Committee, who has been operating jointly with us for the whole of that 12 months, and therefore he's been sensitized to the challenges and the factors that we have to consider. And then finally, one of the undoubted strengths of CCGs has been the interface between lay members, clinical members and officer members of the organisation. And I believe that's been a very fruitful challenge scenario. It's enabled us to keep our feet on the ground and to understand why we're doing this. We're doing it for patients ultimately, which is always difficult because the demand is infinite and resources are not. But I'm particularly pleased that Meryl Watkins, Dr. Meryl Watkins, a member of the Finance Committee and one with growing stature in this complex interface of clinical and finance issues, is to be sitting as a clinical representative on the System Finance and Estates Committee going forward. So Richard Wright made that approach in the knowledge that it's good to have a clinically informed challenger on financial matters, not just on quality and safety areas. So I think that was a very astute appointment by Richard, and I wish Meryl joy of that new position. That's all, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any comments or questions for Andrew, please? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, and congratulations, Meryl. If we move on then to item 54, Audit Committee, Ian G, please.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everybody. So the Audit Committee was pleased to receive the final Head of Internal Audit opinion, which was significant assurance, as the report in front of you suggests. We also received the External Audit report, which also was unqualified opinion from KPMG, and the committee consequently approved the report and accounts as presented under the delegated authority of the board, of the governing body, I should say. So thank you very much for that. That's all I wanted to say. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Any comments or questions for Ian, please? Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Moving through, I think it's still yourself, Ian, item 55, CLCC.
Yeah, thank you. Again, the paper is as tabled there. If you would just note the CPAG updates that were presented to CLCC and also the work that's ongoing in relation to the alignment of services in various forms for Glossop residents as they become part of the Derbyshire ICB. And again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ian. Any comments or questions for Ian, please? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So just moving through, we're now on to item 56, Derbyshire Engagement Committee, and that's Martin, please.
Thank you, Chair. For those who don't know me, Martin Whittle, Chair of the Engagement Committee, lay member for Engagement and Vice Chair of the CCG. Just three things to pick out amongst a few for the last Engagement Committee. One was the updated engagement strategy for submission. It was the engagement strategy for the ICS, very well received, and the committee was assured that it was a good basis for going forward for the ICS. Second thing was the discussion around some of the issues regarding the transition of Glossop into the Derbyshire ICS, and the committee was again assured that a lot of the issues that there are with the transition of Glossop into Derbyshire are being picked up and obviously will be addressed from a patient perspective. And the third thing was we approved the committee assurance report and closed down report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Martin. Any comments or questions for Martin, please? Thank you. Okie dokie. Just again moving through PCCC, item 57, Ian S, please.
Yes, the assurance report is there. The only thing I wanted to highlight following the patient consultation is the full practice merger of Hollybrook Medical Centre and the Haven Medical Centre in Derby City South. That was the only thing I wanted to highlight. Otherwise, it's happy to take questions.
Thanks, Ian. Any comments or questions for Ian, please? Thank you. And then moving through, thanks, Ian. Item 58, QP, Quality and Performance Committee, Buck, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And the report's there. I'm sure happy to take any questions. I mean, it does highlight the continued pressures around accident and emergency and ambulance services, which are nationally publicised, and Derbyshire is experiencing the same issues. I'm happy to take any questions. I wasn't at the meeting. Andrew very kindly chaired in my absence. I was at an ICB development session, but I'm happy to take questions generally about the report. So if there's anything specific to the meeting, then I'll defer to Andrew.
Thanks, Buck. Thanks, Andrew, for covering that. Are there any questions with regard to that for Buck or Andrew, please? Okay, thank you very much. Moving through, we're on to 59, the risk register, and that's Helen, please.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the risk register starts around about page 132, I believe. So this is the complete organisational risk register containing the operational risks. There are a number of things that governing body are asked to receive and note this time. So obviously the report itself. Appendix 1 is a reflection of the risks facing the organisation as at the end of May. Appendix 2 summarises the movement of all risks during that period of time. The amalgamation between risk 4A and 4B into a single risk, which was assigned to the PCCC, or the Primary Care Commissioning Committee. We have a new risk relating to NHS mail, which is an operational risk in people outside of the CCG potentially being able to access MS Teams and the meetings. So there's a new risk around that, which the IT team and NEX are supporting and advising us on. And the final two areas is to note the decrease in risk number 3, which relates to transforming care partnerships, so TCP. I think the governing body have seen a decrease to that over the last few months now. And then finally, to approve the closure of risk 16, which relates to the lack of standardised processes in CCG commissioning arrangements. So those risks would have been through the committees, of course, and based on those conversations, the recommendation is to decrease risk number 3 and to close risk number 16. Happy to take any comments, Chair, on that. Otherwise, asking governing body to receive a note and to agree to those two recommendations, please.
Thanks, Helen. Before we come to that decision and before I come to Jill and Andrew, it's Groundhog Day for you, Helen, with this, what I'm about to say. Can you just iterate for everybody how those risks are going to be transferred across, please?
Yes. So where those risks are live, they'll be captured in the reports that we've just seen, and the whole organisational risk where relevant and are still live and need to be transferred to the ICB will form part of the transfer documentation that we're working through to be presented to the ICB on the first meeting on the 1st of July. We'll turn to the board assurance framework in the next item, Avi, but very similar process to that, of course, as well, but more complex, arguably, because of the work that we're doing to capture some of the broader system risks. But I'll perhaps reserve that to the next item. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to ask you that in every meeting, Helen, but it's just important that we have it down.
It's no problem.
Thank you. I've got Jill, then Andrew, please.
So obviously great minds think alike, because I mean I knew what was happening, but I thought it was helpful to confirm that. So thanks, Abby, and thanks, Helen.
Thank you, Jill. Andrew, please.
Well, it's probably more appropriate for the next item, Chair, so I'll hold it until then.
No worries. Okie dokie. Thank you. So before we move on to the next item, just in terms of formality, is everybody happy to approve the risk register as per Helen's report? Again, I'll take silence to be a yes, or asterisk or shout out if no, or a thumbs up is good as well. Thank you. Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you, Helen. So that's okay and approved. So do you want to just take us straight into the GBAF item 60, please, Helen?
Yes, thank you, Avi. So yes, of course, colleagues will be incredibly familiar now with this process and documentation, and we know that the governing body assurance framework sets out the structure and processes that enables the CCG, or has enabled the CCG, to focus on the strategic and principal risks that might compromise the CCG in achieving its corporate and strategic objectives. We know that the process has worked well throughout the committee architecture, where the committees have owned risks assigned to them, where there's a risk owner for each of the areas, and we report monthly through the committee meetings through to governing body, but also on a quarterly basis more formally in terms of seeing the full governing body assurance framework itself. So what I'd like to report this morning is we're recommending two things, please, which we're asking the governing body to confirm. So we have strategic risk number 7, which is a risk related to staff retention and morale during the transition period. And at the time, we felt that given the high level of uncertainty, I think it's probably fair to say, over the last 12 months, and certainly ahead of some of the formal guidance emerging around what the transfer would look like, plus the additional extension, I think, to creating ICBs moving from April to July. We recognised at the time that there could be a risk around staff retention and morale. We feel that this risk now can be closed. The CCG hasn't experienced significant staff turnover. We talked at length last time around the staff survey, and we can see from those results that morale hasn't been adversely affected from the information of the survey itself. So our recommendation would be that we do close that risk as we close the CCG. There may well be, of course, something which the ICB may wish to consider, of course, around staff going into the ICB and some of the changes that may emerge as part of that development and maturity. The second risk that we're recommending we'd like to close, please, is related to the CCG not being ready to transfer its functions, or has failed to comprehensively and legally close down the organisation. And I hope that much of the information that colleagues have seen through not just this meeting, but through the work of the Transition Working Group, involving many board members and executives, plus the System Transition and Assurance Committee more broadly across the system, has provided significant assurance to the board that the process of closure is being sufficiently met. We've also had confirmation from NHS England regarding our due diligence checklist has been confirmed. There was an extraordinary audit committee on the 18th of May, which took assurance from the work that's been undertaken, and quite a lot of confirm and challenge in that discussion. We've received a letter of assurance to Chris as the CCG accountable officer from the regional director regarding the detailed work that's been underway to manage the closure and also the transfer as well. And there was a successful checkpoint meeting on the 7th of June with NHSEI regional colleagues, and no concerns were raised. So on that basis, I'll be recommending that we close that risk as well, please. Also attached to the report, you'll see the one-page summary from each of the committees, which has described the mitigations, the controls, the movement in risk over the year, and again linked to the conversation we've just had and the annual report process. Any outstanding matters from the board assurance that are relevant to the ICB will be taken forward as part of that first meeting on the 1st of July. And I suppose the added complexity of the board assurance framework for the new ICB is that it will also have oversight of some of the broader system risks as well. So certainly what I plan to do is present an opening board assurance framework for the new ICB that pulls relevant information from the CCG board assurance where those live issues still are relevant, but also to pull in some of the broader system risks and issues as well. So I'll pause there, Chair, but happy to take any further thoughts and questions.
Thank you, Helen. Andrew, please.
Well, that is a superb segue, Helen, because that's what I wanted to probe you on, your last comment, the opening board assurance framework, which has to embrace a wider set of mandates. And I don't know if you held this session, but I think some of our most enjoyable sessions as a board for development sessions, when we were able to hold them, was defining and honing the strategic risks. It's a very useful exercise to go through, I believe, and I don't know whether you've held that exercise with the ICB board. But of course, one of the 4 absolute must strategic mandates is reduce health inequalities. So has there been a debate around what this means for the ICB? And has there been any progress on defining the metrics that would embrace that mandated challenge in respect of reducing health inequalities?
Thank you, Andrew. Really, really important points that you raised there. So a couple of things. So the ICB will receive an opening position on the 1st of July, as I've just set out. It will be an opening position, but will be a developing position. I think it's probably fair to say, given the additional complexities that the ICB will take on. A piece of work that I've been supporting along with one of the non-executive members and the Chief People Officer is to develop the new board, the ICB board's development programme. And part of that development programme, one of the workshops will be around developing and refining the board assurance framework, including setting out the strategic commitments, the strategic risks, and having ownership of that. Part of that session, or linked to that session, we would like to do the work on risk appetite, because I think that's really important to get that understanding, just to understand where the board's thoughts and thinking are around that, recognising some of the challenges that we've got and how the board want to plan and live with an amount of risk in the system and what that means to the work that we as in the ICB going forward will need to do. So yes, I think in answer to your question, Andrew, that is all in hand and all in train. Clearly, the ICB hasn't had very long at all, probably a little over, maybe not even over 3 months working in shadow form. So has had a number of discussions and sessions on themed areas. One of the areas was around population health needs from the 2 directors of public health. But in terms of getting into the detail around what's that telling us, what does that mean in terms of health inequalities, that work and discussion and development is still ongoing. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour and overview to the work that's underway, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm pleased it's on the radar screen.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Helen. And then we've got Chris, please.
Yeah, just to supplement Helen's view, Chair, on that point around health inequalities, completely support Helen's position in terms of the development of the ICB and its development plan, including its view on strategic risks and developing a health inequalities framework. Just to remind colleagues that in many senses there is some continuation of the work around health inequalities. So it's been on this governing body's radar since its inception, and the governing bodies before that were very interested in the determinants of health, and there's a continuation of that concern and wish to support those initiatives. We We held sessions, certainly pre-COVID, if you recall, about the determinants of health, the work that Dean led on our behalf about the life course determinants and the things that you can do from a social care perspective and a sort of broader health system. And that work continues to inform the developing strategic intent for the integrated care system, not just the integrated care board. Just to remind colleagues, there is an NHS England framework now about health inequalities. Our own Dr. Bowler, who colleagues know, is the national lead for health inequalities and is certainly informing our work and our planning. And just yesterday, I saw an update from Robin, who's normally attends this board, in terms of the NHS's view on our forming plan on a page for health inequalities and the work on the core 20+5 initiative that I know colleagues are aware of. So whilst absolutely there's something new that needs to come and to take a view, there is some continuation of work and something to build on. So hopefully that gives some assurance in terms of our continued commitment around health inequalities. Thank you.
Thank you for that assurance, Chris and Helen, and I'm pleased to hear that NHS England's reinforcing that with their own framework, and we've got a local champion on the case.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Anything else for Helen with regard to the GBAF? Any other comments, Helen?
No,
Okay.
Chair, thank you.
And my assumption is the governing body are happy with that. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks very much. So if we move on then to the latter parts of the meeting, item 61 for information. We have been through the committees, but are there any other comments from the committee chairs that they want to bring up now? Okay, great. And then into the final sections, item 62, minutes of the governing body meeting from last month. I believe, oh, Jill, did you want to come in now?
Just on the minutes of the governing body, just a small amendment. Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, go for it. I was going to ask that question anyway.
Okay, so it's on page 219 of the complete pack. It's item GBP 2223032, second bullet point, second line. There's a they that shouldn't be there. Really minor point. But anyway, just for correctness.
Jill, it's fantastic, and we will all miss this in the future, it must be said.
No, I don't think so.
No, honestly, we will. But thank you for that. Thank you for that, and thank you, Martin, for covering that meeting for me because I wasn't there. Any other amendments to those minutes, or do we take them as a true reflection of that meeting? And Martin, just to check with yourself that you're happy with those.
Yes, that's fine, Abby. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we will sign those off as a true reflection. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up and down my agenda. Great. So matters arising. I believe all items are done, Helen, apart from one which is going over to the ICB. Just on my action log, because obviously we want these sorted. So I've got 1007. Linda's taking an action law, an item to the ICB board in July, and the staff survey results, item 28 on that, Helen, are going to governance committee in June. Are we covered off on all of those, Helen? Are you happy with that?
We are, that's correct.
Okay, so we can sign all of those off. So we are going with completed actions all over. Now, forward planner, my assumption is that there will be nothing on that for us going forwards, and then we're just down to any other business. So as ever, any other business, please shout out asterisks. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I think as Chris alluded to, it is our last meeting, so I just wanted to say a couple of words, and I'm sure Chris will as well. And I'm conscious we have another meeting after, and I'm also aware that we have a close down session later on today as well, this early evening. For me, it's just the whole thing is just a big thank you to everybody, and you individuals, the whole thing. So this has been, the CCG concept has been going for a number of years. you'll understand how important to my heart, and I think yours, that the whole clinical input into a health and social care system is absolutely imperative. And the movement of the CCGs and what we've managed to achieve during that time, I think has been manifest and sits still now on the ground, which is the most important thing. We obviously moved from 4 to 1 in terms of this area, and there was a lot of work involved in that, and I'm sure you'll remember the 4 sort of governing body meetings that occurred in the same room and having to work through that. And again, a running theme of the amount of work done behind the scenes by the team to deliver that. I think working in this organisation, everybody has been utterly professional. I think they have been treated each other with respect throughout the whole time, and particularly with huge insults to the system and the NHS, the biggest of which being the COVID pandemic and all of the issues that have occurred around that, and all of the problems, all of the personal problems. I mean, we can go on forever with that. But I do believe that this organisation and this area dealt with that admirably, with no precedent to deal with something like that. And in a concept of a world where people were not in rooms together, making the working so much more difficult. And I think we hand over to the ICB and the new ICS in a strong position, as alluded to before. I think there is a very good legacy of knowledge, and we use the term corporate memory going forwards into that, and hopefully we will be able to build on, if I'm honest, work that we've been doing for a while. The system working is not brand new, and we've had Join Up Care Derbyshire for a little while. We've had iterations of this before, and it is very, very sensible. And I think people will just need to understand that that's an evolution going forwards as well. I think nobody's ever forgotten the whole reason that we're here, which is just simply to improve the lives of people who live in Derbyshire. It's actually really easy. The concept of what we're here to do, the doing is a lot more difficult with the parameters and the issues that we have to work in. But I'm really glad that nobody ever got so involved in corporate bit, bureaucratic bit, that they ever forgot actually why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing. And I'm really, really thankful for that. Just again, more thanks to Chris and the entire exec team for all of their help, everything they've done behind the scenes, and particularly, I'll go on about it forever, looking at a computer screen in a room, perhaps on their own, and not having that ability more recently to be able to socialise, have a cup of coffee, discuss something with somebody, even look at a paper together, and have to look at it separately. All of the members of the governing body, or the clinicians, the lay members, particularly those who are running the subcommittees, the amount of time and effort you've put into that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Martin, for bailing me out on more than one occasion and helping me out with bits of workload. So thank you to that, and never said no to anything I've asked him to do. So thank you very much. And all of the rest of the staff within the CCG, and most crucially, all the staff working on the, as we would not patronisingly say, because I do it as well, we all do it, but working on the ground throughout the whole health and social care system, and to the public, because hopefully, and as they always do, I think the vast majority understand the pressures with which this is all being undertaken, and are usually fantastic. And I'm really glad we've had the engagement committees, and we've been able to actually properly speak to the public through different forum to try and deliver what they want. So from myself, personal thanks massively, hugely, but just thank you to everybody, and good luck to everybody in what they're going to move on to now, and massive thanks from me. And I'll iterate a little bit more this evening as well when we meet up. Chris, did you want to just add a few?
With your permission, and with governing body's permission, just to say a few words, really. So their thanks and reflections, if I may, and I'd like to, make them in this public session, in a purposeful way. So few things from in 2017, and the CCG journey was well underway in Derbyshire by then. And if you think about what we said earlier about the times, we were 5, 6, possibly 7 years into the construct at that time, depending on when the movement started to come about. So I'd like to give thanks to those colleagues who were there at the start of the journey. Some of the members of this governing body were, and supported that first creation of the CCG governing bodies in the 4. I'd like to thank the colleagues who were on the 4 governing bodies of the previous CCGs and for the work that they did. And of course, I want to thank this single CCG governing body for the work it's done since its inception 3 years ago. And it feels fitting that we end the governing body in the way that we've become accustomed to for 2/3 of its statutory existence in this virtual way. It feels fitting that actually we do the last session in this virtual manner, but the way we've conducted it has been a credit to all. I think it's fair to say, like Avi's been reflecting on, my enormous thanks to all the colleagues that make this happen. And there's been a lot of mention this morning of the behind the scenes work, both in the executive and management and administration teams that we have, in the non-executive structures and functions that we have, and the colleagues that support those important mechanisms. And of course, as you've said, Avi, all of our colleagues in our provider organisations who see the patients with the health and care needs on our behalf, and my enormous thanks to those, given the challenges we've been through. I think I would reflect that during the last decade, the Derbyshire CCGs have been through a lot and have managed a lot of difficult challenge. And colleagues don't need me to remind you what they are. It's all in all of our memories, but we have been through some difficult things. The 4 governing bodies and this one has taken difficult decisions when it has needed to. We have brought serious matters to the attention of the governing body, and the governing body has worked through them in a thoughtful and comprehensive way. And as I say, where necessary, we have taken difficult and challenging decisions, with the best view in mind when those decisions have been taken. I just want to set out a couple of thoughts, if I can, and sort of reflecting as the most senior officer serving the governing body. The intention is when you create any new organisation, is that you start to see the sort of business as usual structures emerge, and that the committees that support the governing body become accustomed to doing the hard work of the business, and that allows the governing body itself to stand back and think about strategic matters and think about escalations from those subcommittees. And I have to say, in my honest view, at the end of our time, we have accomplished that. You have seen today that even though the CCG itself is coming to the end, the assurance work that's happens in our subcommittees has continued with really considered gusto right till the very end. And whilst we recognise the strategic work of the CCG has naturally tailed off in the last few months, of course it has, because it'll be for the Integrated Care Board to take on new strategic items. Let's not underestimate or undervalue the work that's gone on in our subcommittees to keep the show on the road. So my thanks to all governing body members for the calm, considered way of operating. As the most senior officer, I can certainly say that I've felt challenged by all governing body members on the things that we've brought in front of you, and I'm sure my executive would say the same thing. But we've felt supported in that challenge. We've felt that challenge has always been constructive and fair and necessary. So I think, I just want to set out my thanks to the governing body in the way it has done its business, because although, again, we've done it in a calm, considered way, we've done it in a comprehensive one. And then lastly, my thanks to you, Chair, publicly, because the governing body is a reflection of the way that you want to run the board, and you've run it in a very, again, calm, thoughtful, considered, but challenging way, which is the way it should be in my view. So my thanks to you as Chair. And I'll stop there, Avi, and hand back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Much appreciated, and totally agree with what you've said. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, basically. And we will, in the absence of any other business, we will meet up again in a few minutes and have a little break. So is everybody happy to re-meet at 10:45, giving us a 15-minute break between now and the next meeting? I'm aware that is earlier than scheduled, but it might mean that we finish and people can get to their afternoon commitments a little bit earlier. So if that's all right, that gives us a 15-minute break. So if we can meet for 10:45 for the next session, please, and see you in a few minutes. And thank everybody for coming. And there will not be one more meeting next time on MS Teams. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, everyone.